Surgical Strikes Part 2, the Balakot airstrike. How was it planned? What really happened? Doctor.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Adi Achint. Watch this story and find out what happened.
Just to give you a little background, it was the day of the 14th of February when Pulwama saw a very dastardly attack conducted by the Jaish-e-Mohammed or the JEM, wherein we lost more than 40 of our brave CRPF soldiers. India had to retaliate and retaliate fast and hard. This was going to be the first time after 1971 that India would use its air power in anger by attacking targets inside the mainland of Pakistan. One major thing that I'd like to bring about at the start of the video is the guideline for this attack was to avoid any civilian casualty or any collateral damage which was not required as part of the plan of the attack. An overcautious Pakistan was of course expecting a retaliation, as the government and many other people in India had stated the fact that India must and will retaliate at the time of its choosing. They had geared up their defenses on the line of control, and as a matter of fact they had removed all the terrorist training camps which were located close by the line of control area. On the same day of the attack, the air chief called one of his commanders in the Western Theatre Command and asked him if he was ready for a retaliatory attack, considering the fact that the government may just ask for them to do something like this at a very short notice. The answer, of course, was forever yes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had called for a cabinet committee on security meeting at 9 a.m. on the 16th of February. What would happen would be decided there. Once the main platform of the fact that we would retaliate to this attack was decided, on the 18th of February, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, called for a meeting attended by the three service chiefs as well as officials from the Research and Analysis Wing. This plan was formulated by the Western Air Command Chief Air Marshal Hari Kumar along with the Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Birendra Singh Dhanoa. They both sat down and discussed what would be the plan of action. It was finally decided that the Western Air Command as well as the Central Air Command would be a part of this retaliatory attack. This is just a background. Now let's look at how the targets were formulated and why these three targets were chosen. The intelligence agency of that time homed in at about 15 terror camps run by different organizations like the Hizbul Mujahideen as well as the Jaish-e-Mohammed. But the focus was always going to be on the Jaish-e-Mohammed, as they were involved in the dastardly Pulwama attack. The targets that were looked at were many locations across the mainland of Pakistan. There were three of them that stood out very clearly in this search. They were Savai Nalla, which is near Muzaffarabad in POK, Charkoti, which is on the line of control, and Balakot, a small province in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. The Jaish camp at Balakot was the main target that was decided in the search of these targets. It was in the mainland of Pakistan and not in sovereign Indian territory in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The message had to go to Pakistan loud and clear that we will enter your house and hit you where it hurts. The camp at Balakot was known as Markaz Syed Ahmad Shaheed. It was formed in about 2004-2005 time, and it is on a crest of a ridge known as Java Top. It is spread over 6 acres of land, 10 major buildings and a lot of other infrastructure. This camp at Balakot was also used as a residence by the brother-in-law of the infamous Masood Azhar. He was known as Yusuf Azhar and was the chief trainer of terrorists in that place. He resided in an abandoned school complex. Let's talk a little bit about the intelligence that was gathered by our snoops across the border. The intelligence agencies had detailed pictures of the trail that led into the Balakot camp as well as the other two camps in Savai Nalla and Chakoti. What they saw were the billboards put up in front of these camps advertising for the training that was being provided inside those camps. Another funny thing that the intelligence agencies realized, that some of these camps also had the flags of Israel, India as well as United States painted on the floor, so that whenever somebody walks on them, they are walking on the flags. Imagine their mentality. Savai Nalla was one of the largest Jaish camps in the region, which is close to Muzaffarabad. Chakoti is a village which is situated about 50 kilometers from Muzaffarabad, close to the Jhelum River. Pakistan has been notoriously using this camp to sneak in Hizbul Mujahideen as well as Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists across the line of control, as the location of this camp is very close to the line of control. The intelligence was as detailed as the fact that the intelligence agencies had copies of the dossiers kept by the Pakistani Punjab government of the 42 Jaish-e-Mohammed instructors who had trained and were training fresh recruits at Balakot. They had their phone numbers, their names of the parents and addresses of their houses as well. It is quite interesting that the Indian intelligence agencies were able to literally dig in deep and gather so much information about these terrorists that were residing there. Reportedly, in Balakot camp, there were 97 Fidain, which are suicide terrorists that were training in that area at that particular point of time. Just to digress a little bit, in these terror training camps, the training was divided into 3 groups. The first one is Daura-e-Aam, which gives basic training to the recruits. The second one is Daura-e-Khas, that is where they receive basic military training. And the third one is Daura-e-Zarhar, where they are receiving weapon training in advanced courses. Now, billboards that were sighted in Balakot especially called for recruitments, as I mentioned earlier, to join for a fresh course that was starting on the 25th of February, and this is one of the main factors, as you will see, which would be used to decide the date of the attack. There was an estimation that about 300 new recruits would be at Balakot post the 25th of February. Armed with all of this intelligence, the Air Chief as well as the National Security Advisor briefed the Prime Minister on the plan of the attack. The Prime Minister gave a go-ahead on the 19th of February for the Indian Air Force to launch such a strike. Now, the choosing of the date, as I mentioned earlier, 25th of February was the day that Balakot would be filled in with new recruits. That was quite a juicy target, if I may put it that way. There was another consideration that was kept in mind, that at that time in February, the Aero India, which is a show in Bangalore, it was ongoing. Nobody wanted to take a risk with so many foreign delegates being in the country at that time. It was therefore decided to go ahead with the date of the 26th of February. The timing of the attack would be, of course, the dead of the night. Let's talk about the deception that was created for Pakistanis to bite onto so that the Indian Air Force could conduct this attack without a single casualty. Of course, as I mentioned initially in the video, the Pakistanis were at high alert as the Prime Minister as well as all our media channels were harping about a retaliatory attack which was needed to be done. And of course, it was required. The whole week before this attack, MiGs from the border bases and even the heavy Sukhois from the deeper inland bases flew up in hundreds of combat air patrol missions near the border and the line of control to create clutters of aircraft for the Pakistanis, so that when this strike package actually approaches Pakistan, they are under a deception that it is one of the exercises that the Indian Air Force is carrying out, as it has been doing for the past 1 week. It was the number 7 squadron of the Mirage 2000s that was chosen for this attack. Of course, a very capable aircraft based at Gwalior. Now the question rises, when there is an attack which is being planned, of course the activity in the airbase is going to increase, and I'm sure the Pakistanis have their ways of finding out what is happening. To ensure that no eyebrows were raised over the sudden activity in the Air Force, there was an inspection that was scheduled on that airbase at Gwalior by the Directorate of Air Staff Inspection, which is commonly known as DASI in the Indian Air Force. It is an inspecting body which goes around all the stations making sure that all is well. Any time the DASI has to be done, the base goes into overdrive to ensure everything goes well for that inspection. To keep Pakistan guessing as well, the Air Headquarters also advanced the timing of a training exercise that was supposed to take place involving a large scale of fighter and other aircraft. When Air Marshal Hari Kumar also visited this airbase, who incidentally was at the time of his retirement, by the way, he was supposed to retire on the 28th of February. He visited this airbase to brief the pilots personally, but under the garb of a farewell dinner that was supposed to be provided to him just before retirement. Even the senior officers in the air headquarters maintain an air of normalcy. As I mentioned, Air Marshal Hari Kumar was on the verge of retirement. Post his party in Gwalior, he was also given another party in New Delhi on the 25th night. Would you believe it? It was the night of the attack itself. The party ended around 10 o'clock and the air chief called Hari Kumar to his side and told him that there was only one word that he would want to hear as soon as the targets have been destroyed. That word was Bandar. Funnily speaking, that's how this operation actually in the Indian Armed Forces lingo has been termed as the Operation Bandar. Let's move on to the strike plan. The strike plan was a high, low, low, high plan. What that means is they would approach Pakistan at very high altitudes when they're in the Indian airspace. As soon as coming close to the border, they would duck down to treetop level, approaching their targets and bomb that targets at a very low level. Post doing the bombing, they would climb up, open up their power and exit the area at very high altitudes and very high speed. The plan was simple but brilliant. As I mentioned earlier, Mirage 2000 aircraft, 18 of them were tasked to do this mission. 6 of them were fitted with MICE anti-aircraft missiles and 12 of them were equipped with Israeli-built Spice 2000 bombs. Spice means smart, precise, impact and cost effective. These bombs could hit something with pinpoint accuracy. The Spice 2000 bomb is a penetration bomb which does not explode on impact. It explodes inside a clear space, which is a room. So it will basically drill through the roof, get inside a room according to the timer which has been programmed into this system and explode inside the room. You can only imagine when a bomb like that weighing about 900 kilograms explodes inside a room, what would be the effect? The Mirages were also reportedly accompanied by Sukhoi 30s, 4 of them to provide air cover, to provide surveillance. The Israeli Falcon, which was the AWACS or the Airborne Warning and Control System, along with the Indian Netra, was also in the strike package. In case one of the aircraft get thirsty, IL-78 tankers were on standby in the sector. At about 1 hour and 15 minutes at the dead of night, on the 26th February night, 18 fully armed Mirage 2000 fighters took off in one-by-one succession out of their base from Gwalior and headed north towards Bareilly. The Indian Air Force was much too aware of the fact that the Pakistanis would be keeping a track of any missions that would be launched in times like this. To deceive the Pakistani radars, these guys went across towards Bareilly, which is basically off the target area that they wanted to strike. They went over Bareilly, took a couple of circuits, tanked up, which is basically refueled, and headed towards the area of Jammu Kashmir, north of Delhi. The Indian Air Force had requested the Delhi Air Traffic Control to create a dark passage for all of them to cross by, because you must understand this is a whole strike package that is going across. It's not just 1 or 2 aircraft. 16 aircraft were supposed to cross into the Pakistan lines, where 4 of them were supposed to stay back on as backups. As I mentioned earlier, the high, low, low, high plan, and I explained it to you. So according to that plan, the minute they entered or came close to the Pakistani borders, they ducked down right onto the deck to avoid detection by the Pakistanis' radars. They split into 3 groups, which was required to attack all the 3 targets simultaneously. A Heron unmanned aerial vehicle was up in the air in that region, monitoring and assessing the target areas for each one of these regions. The entire operations from entering to exit and landing back into India took about 21 minutes. Would you believe that? That is swift. Now, as I had mentioned to you earlier, Pakistan was of course on overdrive. Accordingly, Pakistanis had their AWACS system flying in the air. The minute the Mirages were approaching the line of control or the international border where they crossed into Pakistan from, the AWACS seemed to have picked them up and 2 Pakistani fighters were scrambled from their airbase at Munid. At the same time, there was another decoy made up of Jaguars and Sukhois who streamed across the state of Rajasthan to approach the target of Bahawalpur. This was a deceptive package that was created by the Indian Air Force to divert any Pakistani aircraft that was scrambled to intercept the main mission. The decoy worked. The F-16s were diverted towards Bahawalpur to stop the Indian Jaguars from attacking that region. As a matter of fact, to tell you the truth, it is believed that the Indian Air Force purposefully flew the Jaguars at an altitude so that the Pakistanis could very easily pick them up. This was a bait, and the Pakistanis fell for it. By the time all this decoy activity was happening, the Mirages were closing in to 3 of their targets. The Mirages adjusted their sights, set up their altitudes, set up their speeds and let go. The time on target or the time of the attack was for Balakot at 3:45 am to 3:53 am. For the Muzaffarabad, Savai Nalla, it was 3:48 am to 3:55 am. And for Chakoti, it was 3:58 a.m. to 4:04 a.m. As one can see with this timings, the entire thing was over in a matter of minutes. Let's talk about what exactly happened at the time of the attack. In Balakot, which was supposed to be the main target to send the message to Pakistan, although the camp at Savai Nalla, which is at Muzaffarabad, was a larger camp, but Balakot being inside the Pakistani mainland was the main target. 5 bombs struck the target in Balakot, hitting a large complex housing about 150-200 recruits. The main building was targeted, and most of the 42 leadership that I was talking about, which was there in that particular main building. One target, sadly, they missed out, was the target of Yusuf Azhar, who was staying in the southern part of the entire camp in Balakot. That is because the aircraft that was tasked to attack this area could not lock on properly, and he had to exit out without hitting that target. As I mentioned earlier, this entire mission was over within about 21 minutes. All the aircraft landed back to the base. The information went out to the people that were supposed to know. The Indian Armed Forces went on high alert as they were prepared for a retaliatory attack that the Pakistanis might conduct, which of course happened on the next very day, coming out with the big incident of a MiG-21 shooting down an F-16. I'll be doing another video in the next week about that, telling you the secrets of that mission. Now, how this information was supposed to be released to the Indian public was another task that was thought about by the core team that was going across. They did not want to make too much of a fuss. They just wanted to put out a press release at about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. But the Pakistanis literally spilled water on that plan, as the DGISPR started tweeting late at night that the Indians came and hit us and went away and so on and so forth. When this tweet was seen by Indian officials, they went into overdrive to redesign their plan of putting this information out in the public domain. Only at 11:30 a.m. in the morning did India officially acknowledge the fact that punitive airstrikes were conducted on the 3 targets. As it is for everything in our great country, there are doubts for everything. And it is sad when people actually doubt the efforts of the armed forces. I'm not here to prove that this strike happened or not happened for those conspiracy theorists, but I'm here to say that I am very, very sure that the Indian government, who actually knew the names and addresses of the terror trainers that were there, would have details enough to provide for a concrete solution and the result of that entire attack. The Indian Air Force has released certain satellite images which literally show the puncture wounds that were created on the roofs of the buildings by the Spice 2000 bombs. As I had explained to you earlier in the video, that is what they are designed to do. Yet, there are still doubts. And to the naysayers, I have only one thing to say. Please find something better to do than put a spot on the Indian Armed Forces. Now, of course, the intelligence agencies were on high alert. There are reports of the fact that there were Indian snoops very close to this target, keeping a watch out as to what was happening. There are also reports that tell you that Indian spies were following the 3 service chiefs of Pakistan that very night to ensure there was no untowardly activity on their side. 37 ambulances were put on the task to remove dead bodies and injured from that entire spot. This is confirmed. The Pakistanis did not even let the locals of that area go close to this place because they were scared that the world will come to know what exactly is happening there. As a matter of fact, I was online yesterday where I saw the Balakot terror training camp in full swing back again, and I think it's time for the Indian government to plan another strike to destroy it once and for all. Another thing that I'd like to put across finally is the fact that this raid, it is meant to send a clear message to Pakistan that, buddy, if you do what you did again, we will come inside your house and we will hit you where it hurts. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope I was able to give you certain facts that were not known by you earlier. Subscribe to my channel, share my videos with your friends, and of course, yes, share a thought for our soldiers standing in the battle lines in the thick winters today, both on the eastern border as well as the western border, once a day, every day. Jai Hind!